Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. So for all you Audie fans, he is sleeping a couple of yards away from me in the front window. And the reason for that is yesterday he got quite a show from hanging out in that window. Now, as I explained yesterday, they had been working on the wiring in the neighborhood. The trucks were coming and going. He didn't like that. I think it made him nervous. He didn't want to be out with them. He didn't know who they were or why they were in his neighborhood. Fortunately, he wasn't trying to bite them or anything like that. He just gave them a wide berth. But then, later in the afternoon, after the electrical workers left, there was a car parked out on the side of the road. And I didn't think anything of it because we are in a semi-rural area here. And people just pulling their cars over to the side of the road because their paths crossed with someone they know. And then they get out of their car and they just start chatting. That's kind of normal around here. It's not the sort of thing you see in the city, but this is not the city. But when they had been out there for a while, and Audie had been staring at them out the window for a while, and eventually wanted to go out, I thought, we got something going on here. So I let Audie out. I grabbed a couple of bottles of water and went over, because it was a warm afternoon. I couldn't figure out what they were doing, but they were there for longer than they would have been if something hadn't been wrong. Turns out, in fact, their car tire, I thought it was a flat tire, but the tire had come off the axle. I don't know. I don't drive. I've never driven. I'm not a car person. The thing that holds the tire in place and the tire had become separated. And they had called a friend. They were just waiting for someone to bring them apart. They were okay. They did not need help. I couldn't have given it to them, even if they did. But I could give them some water to at least make it a little more tolerable for them to be sitting out in the bright sun like that. But I did have to warn them, of course, because by then Audie was outside and he was supervising. So I did have to warn them that, they can't let the cat help. No matter what he says, he just doesn't know what he's doing. I'm not sure they got it, but I'm sure you all do. You got to know he'd be out there saying, "Oh yeah, I've been changing tires since I was a little kitten. Just make way and let me do it." And then he would be stealing their lug nuts. So they were okay. They did promise they wouldn't let Audie anywhere near what they were doing, although I have no idea how they were proposing to keep him away because, it's Audie. But eventually, my neighbor across the street came home. I knew immediately that he was not home because as soon as I walked out the front door, I could hear his dog barking. And Watson, that's the dog, does not bark when Daddy's home. Well, he does, but never like that. So I know his "my daddy is not home" bark. And I had thought, that's why Audie wants to get out. He wants to tease the dog, because Audie does tease the neighborhood dogs. It's naughty of him, but I can't seem to break him of the habit. So my neighbor comes home, went over. He told me they had the situation as well in hand as they could under the circumstances, which is they had a bad repair done on the tire in the first place. They were awaiting a part just enough so they could get it home, get it into a garage, do something permanent with it. But Audie was delighted by this. This was more excitement than he ever could have imagined. They were out there. There was a car. There was a tire. There were 2 new friends he could make. So Audie was an extremely happy cat yesterday, even though the day did not start off well because he had to cope with the electrical workers. So that's my Audie news. And that was actually quite a lot of Audie news. But he's right back in the window, hoping for more excitement. We'll see. All right, when we get back, we are going to get started. So let me start with Happy Easter for those of you who celebrate. This video is airing Easter Sunday morning in the US. For our Australian friends, happy whatever Easter Monday is. And that, because I didn't know what the Saturday before Easter was called, and I made an offhand remark in yesterday's video. That started like a whole thing in the comments section. Now, I have to say, I don't ordinarily like introducing religious issues, and I didn't consider this to be as much a religious issue as just an issue of semantics. What is the name of this day? But I have to say, because this is a very respectful community, we didn't have to contend with any of the weird stuff that you often get when religion is a topic. Everyone was polite, respectful, informative. Nobody was getting abusive. And unfortunately, religion, for some reason, you would think it would like calm people, that it would elevate them. And I don't mean that in the fashionista sense, because you know how I hate that context for the word. That it would improve their mood, their spirits, but sometimes it has exactly the opposite effect. And so I'm always a little nervous when religion is introduced into the comments section. But again, very good community we have, and nobody, at least as far as I saw yet, had been in any way inappropriate. So thank you all so much for that. Yes, every time I read the comments section, you folks restore my faith in humanity. And yes, sometimes I am inclined to get very world-weary and jaded. So, thank you. All right. So, I also wanted to pick up another thread, not the religion, that was raised in yesterday's video. And that was the discussion of coat hangers. And I know for some of you, this is going to sound like the most boring topic in the world. But I promise, if you give me just a few minutes, I will be able to hook you on this discussion. Ooh, that was a nice unintentional little pun. We have coat hangers. Everyone has coat hangers in their homes. We all do. They are everywhere you go. You go to the doctor's office, there's a rack with coat hangers. It's unavoidable. But here's the thing. Despite all of the airtime coat hangers get, particularly when you look at videos from the fashionistas and the influencers, especially the fashion influencers, you would think people would know a whole lot more about coat hangers than they actually do. You would think at least somebody out there would be saying, these are the coat hangers and this is what they're used for. Nope, we're all on our own. So let me just give you a very, oh, hi, honey. Let me just give you a very, very quick history of coat hangers. And it's easy. Millennia, nothing. And then in the Victorian era, we did have some prototypical coat hangers. They were not standardized. They were all handmade. And in fact, all right, no, excuse me a minute, got to deal with this. So I just let my bad boy out because he was going to sit in my lap and shove his tail up my nose all throughout the video. And boy, is that distracting, but he'll be back. So we were on Victorian prototype coat hangers. These were, it was an idea whose time had come, as they say. Prior to this, in that millennia, no hangers. People had clothes storage systems that were very, very bound up in the types of clothing they wore. For example, the Greeks and the Romans with their shawl-like garments, squares and triangles of cloth they would use to wrap themselves in. They used systems of pegs, and the Chinese did as well, although their garments were more structured. Places like South Asia, where most of the clothing was simply a long rectangle of fabric that one wound around one's body. Their clothing was laid flat. And that, by the way, that flat laying actually seemed to be the most common method of clothes storage in the West for, 2,000 years. You would have an item, you would put it into a box when you were through wearing it, or put it on a shelf, or if you were a peasant, you'd put it back on your body because it was pretty much all you had. So clothing storage was only really an issue for the upper classes. They were the only ones with enough clothing so that they would have items on their bodies and items waiting in the wings for the next time they were going to wear it. Most people couldn't even relate to that. Most people would simply piece together whatever they could. If they had clothing, they put it on. Multiple layers. And we've seen much of this, and this is going right up through the Victorian era for people who were not well-to-do, for the poor. If they owned it, they were wearing it. People did not own multiple pairs of shoes. People did not own clothing that was idle. They couldn't afford it. And the fact of the matter is, indoor heating was not good if it was available at all. And also in the Victorian era, I should also throw this out, they had this notion that staying in a confined space was profoundly unhealthy. Had to do with early germ theory that I think they pretty much got wrong. But they believed that the healthiest way to live in a building was to keep the windows open in January. That's just what they did. I can't mock them because I never close my bedroom window. I have one window, stays open 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. It's just how it works here. I would have done well in the Victorian era. But it does mean that you are wearing more clothing just to stay warm. You're wearing more in the daytime, you're wearing more at nighttime. So their use of clothing was very, very different. And one of the problems we have when we look at this is we don't really see the information about the clothing usage of the lower classes, because books, magazines, these were not discussing life of the ultra poor, because frankly, no one was interested in that. And even today, we look at this and think, well, that's depressing. Let me find something better to read. So when we look at things like the early 19th century, and you know I love Jane Austen, she was not discussing how the housemaids were dressed, how, the flower girl on the town square corner was dressed. She was talking about how the sons and daughters of gentlemen were dressed. Gives us a very distorted picture. So these people all had very little in the way of clothing storage needs. Because, like I say, if they owned it, they were wearing it because they had to, because it was cold or wet. And the fact is that we don't get a clear sense of what was happening. Where we do get our clear sense is the furniture that comes down to us. And so we look at things like a bureau, a dresser, what was at one time very commonly called a chest of drawers. And you can see where this is going. They used to keep their clothing in chests, then drawers, and then they had the chest of drawers. But that's all well and good. Men's jackets, women's fine fancy party dresses were not being stored that way. They were either being stored on pegs, just as the Greeks and Romans and the ancient Chinese did, again, millennia ago, no changes, or they were being stacked up in trunks. And of course, the stacked up in trunks part was the part that the Victorians felt the need to get rid of. Victorians, remember, we've got the Industrial Revolution going on simultaneously. Victorians finally started having a middle class. This is when you had a lot of people who were not rich, not poor, but were able to afford some of the finer things in life without the extreme wealth of the aristocracy, just regular, normal people with more clothing than they needed and a need to find storage for it. So we do start seeing other options. People were no longer happy pulling suit jacket, well, they weren't suit jackets, but men's jackets, women's fancy dresses out of trunks or fishing through the layers to get something out of the bottom, getting it out, it's all wrinkled, and until you've pulled it out, you don't realize the moths have been feasting on it for 6 months. Something had to be done. Hence, mid-19th century, that's when we have the first, earliest baby prototype coat hangers. Didn't become widespread until the very early 20th century. And coat hangers in the very early 20th century have not, we haven't changed much from those designs. So you would see wire hangers that look just like, those Joan Crawford wire hangers. The wire hangers that we know of, the ones that come from the dry cleaner, etc. Yes, wire hangers, early 20th century. We would also see wood hangers, and we often saw some unusual specialty hangers. And I am going to show you some pictures of these as we talk about it so that you can see what was available. Because coat hangers are very, very interesting. The thing that puzzles me, and what I wanted to throw out to all of you, is it's been a good century and a quarter since the turn of the 20th century and the emergence of the standardized coat hanger, and we don't seem to have been making that many improvements. I have this firm belief that most of us would be a lot happier with our clothes storage if our coat hangers were purchased according to the job they were supposed to be doing. And again, as I had said yesterday, not the way the fashionistas do it. Oh, I would like all blue coat hangers in my closet. No, no. To me, that is like saying I would like all blue utensils in my silverware drawer, even if it turns out they are all soup spoons. Yeah, hey, as long as they're all the same. Doesn't make sense because they're not doing the job they were intended to do. So I started talking about coat hangers that I have. And I want to go back a bit because I started off with wooden hangers. I had just put heavy garments on wire hangers and had them just drop to the floor too many times to be comfortable going forward with that. So I guess it was sometime in the 1980s I just kind of went over to wooden hangers. And they were hard to get, by the way. I got my wooden hangers like everywhere. I would go into a department store, I would buy a dress, and I would grab the sales clerk and say, listen, can I take a few hangers off, the shelves? And half the time they would just give them to me, because this is back in the 80s, before there was much of a demand for wooden hangers. The other times, they would say, sure, take all you want, give me $5. It was easy enough to get them, but could I get like matching sets? No, and it didn't matter to me because I wanted items that did the job. And so I still have hangers in my closet that I have saved from purchases, especially if the hangers are useful, because for jackets and sweaters and coats, larger, heavier items, if there's going to be weight on it, and if I'm going to be concerned that the item hold its shape, I want that big, beefy hanger with the sculpted shoulders, and yes, I pay for them. I probably pay about $4 or $5 per hanger for these. So I'm not going to pretend that this is just something everybody ought to be doing without thinking about it. But I will say, if you have a very heavy winter coat, consider it. $4 or $5, get one for your coat. If you have suit jackets, if you have anything that is large, heavy, and inclined to lose its shape, if it's hanging on a fragile hanger, think about it. Because for me, those hangers are game changers. It is the difference between taking a jacket out of the closet and putting it on, or taking a jacket out of the closet, bringing it into the bathroom, dragging out the steamer, plugging it in, and spending 20 minutes reshaping the jacket. Yes, game changer. Why? Because I'm lazy. I will admit it. I do not want to have to spend 20 minutes steaming an item before I put it on. It just doesn't appeal to me. Another kind of hanger I keep, and these were the hangers that I had back in the 80s, were the less substantial wooden hangers. What most people think of when you say wooden hangers. More along the lines of suit hangers, blouse hangers, dress hangers. They are heavy enough to be useful, and they will not distort your clothing. But, in a pinch, yes, I would put a heavy coat on one of these and not be afraid that it was going to fall to the floor. Would I leave my winter coat on a hanger like this for 6 months? No, I would not, because I would have to get it reblocked before I wore it again. And boy, that's not just hitting my lazy button, that is hitting my wasted money button, because dry cleaners charge a lot to reblock a coat. So, practical consideration. But these wooden hangers are great for slacks. They are great for regular blouses and shirts. They are great for very lightweight items, sweaters perhaps, I don't know. I worry about my sweaters, so maybe not. But there is a whole gray area in your closet where these are the best solution. And I do keep those little flocked hangers, with the fuzz on them. because that flocking holds your shirts in place. You put a shirt on it and it stays put. If it's a tank top, it stays. If it's something with nothing but a little strap, it will stay. What I don't like are coat hangers with little strap notches in them. Don't like those at all, because on something like this, and this is just a linen t-shirt, on something like this, when I wash it, I line dry it on its hanger. Just take it out, shake it out, put it on its hanger, and then hang the hanger on the line. And if it has little strap divots in the hanger, those divots will show up on the shirt. So I don't want to do that, because then, when it's dry, it's on its own hanger, no divots, and I can just pop it in the closet. Life is good. It's a linen. I don't generally press my linen, so I'm happy, perfectly happy. I do have a number of those flocked hangers with little divots, and I do use those for drying things like socks or whatever, things that I am putting on a hanger, and I'm relying on that flocking to keep them in place while they dry. Yeah, but those are not the hangers that live in my closet. Those are the hangers that live in my laundry area. So that's how I do it. And I don't have any problem with this. After a while, it just becomes second nature. You look at your clothing, you look at the item you want to hang, and you just immediately grab the correct hanger. Does it need shoulder support? Is it a jacket, a sweater, a coat? Does it need that beefy hanger? Yeah, there you go. Is it something that is heavier than a linen t-shirt, and I will want the shape maintained? Well, there's the wooden hanger. Is it a linen t-shirt or something equally lightweight? Because I do hang a lot more than I put in my dresser drawers. That's just the way it is for me. I find it easier to locate my clothing if it's all hanging than if I have to go fishing through drawers for it. My preference. And when I do that, well, like I say, it's easier. But in the meantime, there are things that I don't have in my wardrobe. Consequently, there are hangers I don't have. Skirts. I do not wear skirts. I actually own a skirt. I have to be honest, I do own one skirt. It's part of a vintage suit, and it is on its own little dedicated vintage hanger. And I don't even know why I keep that. I think I keep it out of love. I really ought to do something with that because I'm not wearing it. But things like skirts, I have a lot of questions about. Fortunately, because I don't wear them, I don't have to deal with it. But I don't like those skirt hangers with the little clamps on them, because those little clamps will leave little indentations on the waistband of your skirt. Now, if you choose to hang pants, trousers, anything with which you are going to wear a belt, great. Why? Because those little clamp marks are going to be hidden by the belt. You're not going to have a problem. But I don't think that's the smartest way to deal with skirts. I think the bar clamps, where there is an entire bar going across the bottom, and then you slip the skirt in, lock it over. Yeah, I would probably do that if I were keeping skirts. I'm not keeping skirts, so I don't have to worry about that. But that is certainly what I would consider using. With trousers, trousers are great. They are easy, because you take a pair of trousers, and as you know, you have a crease in the front, a crease in the back. You pick up the two legs together, drop the coat hanger between the legs, flip one leg over the rod, and that's that bottom rod on the coat hanger. the other leg over that, hang them up. It's the easiest way. And the weight and friction of the fabric will hold them in place. So that is a trick. I'll have to show you a demonstration of that one of these days. I can do it because I have dolls. I will dig out doll clothes and a doll hanger and show you, because I can give you a mini version of that. But we'll do that some other time. That was a trick I learned from a men's haberdasher. And yeah, the guy showed me how to do it, took the hanger, shook it around, and those pants they didn't slip, not a bit. So that's how I deal with slacks, those regular old wooden hangers. But I do think that, first of all, if you've decided you want to color coordinate your coat hangers, you're definitely putting form over function. Function should come first, form comes second. But you're not getting the most out of your hangers. And they're not doing the job for you that they should be doing. And what this amounts to, in my universe, is one, less work. If I only have to do, I pull this out of the washer, I put it on its hanger, I line dry it, I take that same hanger and throw it in the closet. Gee, I've just saved myself a lot of work. I don't even have to take it off the hanger. It's done. If I have to spray, iron, steam, reshape, because jackets, sweaters, well, reshaping them is called blocking. And as I say, dry cleaners charge you a good deal of money to do that. You can do it yourself, but it takes a lot of time and patience. I'd rather not. So the right tool means I don't have to. So I thought it was worth talking to you folks about, because in fact, coat hangers are new in our universe. We've only had them in general circulation for about 125 years, and nobody's bothered to really change the style since they were originally thrown onto the market. Nope. And most of the time people buy their coat hangers based on what is cheapest. And that makes perfect sense if you are buying polyester t-shirts from Kmart. Go for it. But if you're going into better stores, buying better quality items and throwing them on cheap hangers, doesn't make a lot of sense. You're taking an investment piece on one hand and throwing it onto a hanger that is probably more suited to a shirt like this, or possibly even, a very heavy winter coat. You're not getting the most out of your money. And I would say that's where the disconnect is coming in for me. So that is my 50 cents on coat hangers, simply because I realized yesterday I'd thrown the subject out there and never really bothered to develop it. I am not, by the way, 100% satisfied with my coat hanger options. Not because I think there are better coat hangers out there that I do not have access to, but because I don't think there are better designs out there, and I think there should be. And I would like to see that happen. But overall, I would have to say, because I've taken the time to put some thought in it, yes, I am happy with that part of my clothing storage. And as for the rest, well, my dresser drawers, I'm still dealing with them the same way that people back in the 17th, 18th century dealt with their clothing, dealt with their dresser drawers. Nothing has changed very much, but interestingly enough, we, as 21st century people, and our use of our wardrobe has changed a great deal. I gotta wonder, if we're not missing a trick here. All right, that's what I have for you today. Audie is snoozing on the porch. Apparently, no people with broken down cars have come by to visit him today, and I think he's quite disappointed. He had been very excited for the company yesterday. So my poor broken-hearted kitty. We are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. For those of you who join us for Just Chatting this evening, 8 o'clock, New York City time. Looking forward to seeing you. And for everyone else, we'll see you here next week. And in the meanwhile, have a terrific day.